One would imagine that the Greek community is known for being a loving, accepting, and stable environment. However, for decades, fraternities have been at the center of several scandals that resulted in inappropriate behavior towards others and even the deaths of fraternity members. One of the main issues of discussion within fraternities is the effect of hazing on their members. Extensive research has been done in an attempt to identify the main factors that contribute to such incidents occurring. Several studies have determined those main factors to be the culture and environment that is encouraged within an organization, as well as the communication that organization practices. The theory that I chose to analyze my data is the cognitive dissonance theory. The cognitive dissonance theory describes the distressing mental state caused by the inconsistency between a person's two beliefs and an action. In other words, the cognitive dissonance theory attempts to describe how a person's mental state can be altered through another person's contradicting ideas being merged with their own. This theory is the perfect one to use, I feel like, because the case study that I've chosen to do determines the effect that an environment, or in other words, beliefs or action, can have on another person, causing them to do other things, act in an unorthodox manner, a manner in which they would not have acted in previously, as well as act among other people. A study that was conducted by Semino attempted to determine why planned failure is incorporated within fraternities. Planned failure is a task that is designed for failure. In other words, a task that is designed to allow punishment. For example, the induction rituals of fraternities. Many of the rituals are very difficult. They're not impossible, however, they are very difficult to complete, resulting in almost immediately the punishment, hazing, and bullying of that fraternity member that pledged at the time. These are things that Semino was attempting to do research on and to figure out why and how such things are incorporated into the culture of fraternities. In addition, the study contributed to the case by identifying negative traits that are being implemented into fraternity cultures, ultimately encouraging and allowing hazing and the inappropriate behavior towards other members and other people within on campus or within collegiate communities. In comparison to Semino, Boswell and Spade conducted a study in 1996 that identified a different and yet more negative culture within fraternity organizations. Boswell's study was based on rape culture of fraternities. Boswell questioned how such culture can be developed within such a supposedly safe environment, as well as the effect it has on other community members on college campus, for example, but mostly towards women. This research contributed significantly to the study by also providing information supporting the negative effects culture can have on frat members as well as others. The methods and procedures I used for this case study. The methods I used was a sociological approach because my case study is focused on society. To be specific, it is focused on the collegiate society, the community, the environment of college campuses. I also use interviews to analyze the data. I felt as if interviews are the most appropriate to use because it allows me to have one-on-one interactions and conversations with fraternity members, getting their honest, hopefully honest responses and opinions on certain topics. The results of the study vary. However, after analysis of the data, there was a lot of evidence supporting the claim that cultures have a negative effect on young men within fraternities. However, there was also information that did not support this claim. Realistically, this type of evidence was expected because not all fraternity organizations and Greek organizations have had scandals and have had investigations to where have had an investigation attempted to determine how a young man was killed in a certain incident, or investigating how rape happened within this organization. Not all organizations have negative cultures. For example, one of the most infamous organizations that have been within several scandals and have underwent several investigations regarding sexual misconduct has been the Alpha Sigma Epsilon fraternity. This is the data presented as well. It provided information supporting as well as not supporting this claim, which was expected. After analysis of the data, three things were developed that help further analyze the results and data to provide a better understanding for how such culture can be developed, as well as how such culture and communication practices have negative effects upon the men within the fraternities. The first thing that was developed was that environment contributes directly to reciprocated behavior. For example, if a person is in an environment where bullying is normal, they're going to grow up believing that bullying is something that is normal to do against another person. This is the same thing that was presented within the case study and the research and the studies that have been done. For example, the embarrassing and horrific rituals that some fraternities force upon their members may result in them committing those same acts. Secondly, another thing that was developed is the idea that selective exposure prevents dissonance. Selective exposure is the tendency of people to avoid information that would create cognitive dissonance because it is incompatible with their beliefs. In other words, selective exposure is the ability to understand that another person's belief and tendencies will not affect my own beliefs and tendencies. For example, a response to the questions that I answered by a fraternity member was, I feel like I have changed, but on my own terms. This is a great example for a selective exposure. The fraternity member that stated this was explaining how, yes, I have changed, because that is something that college students will do. We will grow and we will mature. However, I did not change due to the influence of another person. Keeping in mind that this question was based on, have I changed in a negative way? Have you changed in a negative way caused by the environment of the fraternity that you were within? So, through this statement by this fraternity member, it is showing that not all people allow negative environments to affect their mental state and their behavior towards others. As I mentioned earlier, there's evidence supporting that, not supporting the fact that culture has a negative effect on people. This theme is the primary example of that claim. The third and final thing that was presented throughout the data was the presence of the minimal justification hypothesis. The minimal justification hypothesis is a claim that the best way to stimulate an active change in others is to offer just enough evidence to elicit counter-attitudinal behaviors. In other words, a person who is not used to doing certain things or behaving a certain way being encouraged to behave a certain way in response, a person behaving, not being used to behaving a certain way, but they are being encouraged to behave a certain way by being offered an incentive, anything of value, anything that that person believes will encourage this person to act accordingly. This is one thing that was very present throughout the data. For example, I asked the question, what tasks/activities were you required to participate in? Now, as a response, a member stated, fraternities are known for participating in parties or kickbacks. A kickback is another form of a party, just not as upbeat and up-tempo as a party. But within these two activities, there is alcohol consumption and there is drug consumption. Now, these things may seem to be normal within collegiate environments. However, there are some people that have never been exposed to such things. Coming into fraternities, there are some pledges and members that have not been exposed to certain things. Keeping in mind, this is something, parties and alcohol consumption and drug consumption is something that is normal. Not doing this is unorthodox within a fraternity organization, which brings me to a culture that has been built within the Greek community. However, back to the theme, a person that is not used to such things is being offered whatever to get them to loosen up and to get them to behave accordingly. This is another great example of how such behaviors are being encouraged within our communities and changing the way a person acts, lives, and their personal beliefs, not for the better, but just to match what that specific fraternity believes is the right way to behave. Ultimately, this results in such things as hazing, bullying. There have been incidents where people have been hazed and bullied to where a death occurred because they did not, or they either did not participate in this or they did participate in it. After extensive research, I learned the importance of positive communication skills and as well as incorporating a positive environment. It is evident that negativity was present in both categories, resulting in the occurrence of unfortunate events as well as changes to an individual's mind and body. To avoid this, it is important to practice positive communication behaviors and to implement positive behaviors within Greek organizations. The goal is to change the image of what the culture and how the culture and environment of a Greek organization should be. It should be about fun. We're college students. College should be fun. However, committing acts that is unorthodox to people, forcing these people to commit such acts and behave such way does certain things to a person's mind. It creates a dissonance within their mental state, ultimately resulting in them acting accordingly to others in inappropriate ways that can result in death, as we have seen has occurred several times. Thank you.